Hey, this is Bryan, and thanks so much for watching Keys Motorsports. If you haven't done so already, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe and check us out at keysmotorsports.com. In today's video, we are going to be continuing our Pure Stage 2 Turbo installation on my N55 xDrive 335. So sit back, grab some popcorn, and let's take a turbo off. At the end of our last video, we removed the nut that secures the engine support arm to the engine mount. Now it's time to remove the 4 E14 bolts that secure the engine support arm to the motor. As you'll see, there are two that are visible and very easy to get to from this angle, but the other two are best removed with an extension and a swivel from the wheel well. All right, now that we have that arm loose, it's still a little bit tough to get out, so what you need to do is just take this right here, and you want to lift your motor. Just go very slow. This is a trial and error thing. You don't want to go too crazy, you don't want to go too far, so twist it up a little bit. If you can get it out, great. If not, twist it up just another spin or two, and then just keep going until you're able to get it out. Now what you can do with that extra clearance is just pop this up, and just very carefully slide it off to the side just like that. So next what we're going to do, we need to have as much clearance as possible. So we're going to remove this motor mount. So you're going to need an E12, and there are 3 of these bolts. There's one here, there's one back here where I'm waving my finger there, and then there's one up here in the front. So at this time, you can very carefully remove these. All right, there's the last bolt, and then what you can do, you can take the whole mount, just lift it up, pull it off. Next, we're going to remove the black plastic retaining clip from the top of the turbo to intercooler charge pipe. I do apologize, this is very difficult to show, but basically what you're going to do is you're going to use a long screwdriver from the bottom of the car, and you're going to press the clip upwards towards the turbo. Now, if you've ever removed your intercooler before, it's the exact same piece. It's not reused, so once you remove it, feel free to chuck it. Once you've done that from the bottom of the car, you can remove the C-clamp that secures the turbo to intercooler charge pipe to the turbo. Once that clamp is removed, you should be able to pull that pipe right off. Now, if you've ever done an intercooler or a charge pipe in the past, exact same fittings, exact same C-clamp. So now what we're going to do is we are going to remove the inlet. So what you're going to need first is a T20. So I'll get this set up and you can see where I'm going with this. So what you need to do now is get a T20, and we're going to very carefully release this screw. Now it's a little bit difficult to see here, but if we take a look at our pure inlet, this is the location right here where that screw is mounted. You're also going to have a bolt that's going to sit through this hole right here, and we're going to remove that next. Grab yourself a 10mm, reach back down into this tight little crevice here, and let's remove that other bolt that secures the inlet to the motor. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get this hose right here. We're just going to wiggle it out. Okay, there's no other clamps or anything. It's just going to wiggle out, and you'll just see that there's an O-ring that sits around it. Here's a shot of the hose that's in your inlet. So as you can see, there's just an O-ring, and then you just pull it straight out. All right, so now what you need is you need a 10mm and a couple of extensions. And what we're going to do is we're going to reach this in through here, and there is a 10mm nut that is going to hold the inlet pipe to the turbo. So what you can do is just reach up here, kind of where the fan area is, with a couple extensions, and then you will be able to release this nut, and then we can pull our inlet out. Okay, and you can grab that nut, just pull it down, and then what you can do is just grab your inlet, just wiggle it up and down a couple times. Watch out, you might get some dirt that falls on you. Set that out of the way. Then while you're up here, you need to unplug the diverter. So there's this little spring clip. What you do is you press the spring clip in, and then you pull the connection down and just set that out of the way. So here's a look at that connection. So all you need to do is just press down on the spring clip, and then you can release it. So now that the inlet is fully disconnected, you just very carefully navigate it out, just like that. Now what I'm going to do to get better visibility is I'm going to remove this heat shield. So the first thing that you need to do is just unclip these items that are secured to the heat shield. Pop that off just like that. And this wire is clipped on over there. And then what you could do is you can get a T30. Now these are very difficult to see, but if you use a cell phone or something, it's going to make it a lot easier to see exactly where you need to go. Unfortunately, there's just no way that we could get a camera in there. So here's what this screw looks like. And to make it easier, I used one of these little thumb drivers. Gave me plenty of grip in that little tight space. We were able to get it out with success. Now, when you're removing the heat shield, there's a total of 4 of these bolts. The 2 that are towards the front of the car, they're easiest to get from the top. The back 2, easiest to get from the bottom. So if you look down here, there is one more 10mm nut. Let's reach in, release that. Now this one's going to be near impossible to see, but there's one more 10mm nut under here. So this time you can remove that. Pull this straight out. So as you can see, this is the heat shield. There are 4 holes where the T30 sit. A little bit awkward, but just take your time and use the right tools, and no problem. All right, so what we're doing right now is we are finally at the point where we have all the accessories out of the way. We have all the preliminary stuff. It's turbo time. So we're gonna start by removing some of the coolant lines, some of the oil lines, then we'll unbolt the manifold, pull everything down. There's a couple other steps in there, but that's gonna be the gist of it. So let's start with this coolant line. You're gonna need a T30. All right, so we're going to begin with this bolt, this bolt, this bolt. Again, they are all T30s. So what you can do, just carefully pull that out. I'm so good. All right, so on the side of the turbo right here, you are going to have your coolant return line. So take your T30, and there's 2 lines, and the bolt is in the middle. It's a little bit awkward and hard to see, so we'll show you a better picture of what it looks like once the turbo is actually off the car. So at this time, you can take your T30 and release that bolt. Now what you can do is use a T30 again and remove this oil line. There's a T30 right over there. And then if you follow this line right over here, there's one that goes to the block. It's a little bit hard to see, but if you get in a position like this, you'll be able to find it pretty easily. Now what we need to do is we need to release this hose clamp right there, and this bolt is a 6mm, so at this time you can remove this. Then what you can do, just remove your coolant hose just like that. Now you're gonna need a T45 for this bolt and these 2 right here. Now what you're supposed to do is leave these loose for now, and you can completely remove this one. Now to get the turbo out, we're actually going to remove them all, but just for now, for the time being, we're going to just loosen everything, but we will take this one fully out. By fully out, I mean strip it in half. All right, so what we need to do now, there's another line connected to the block. Over here, again, it's a T30 as you'd expect. So we're going to remove this. And the best way to find this one is it's under the diverter valve. Okay. Once you've done that, you just get the line and just pull it out of the block. And just like that. And some oil may come out and drip on you. Then what you'll be able to do is just carefully pry this out. It's kind of a pain, so what we tried to do is we tried to get a pry bar right about here from the top, and then Cliff worked from the top, I worked from the bottom. We used a little teamwork, and then we were able to pop that out. And the bottom one, because the hose is disconnected, we don't really need to do anything else with that. So we're just gonna leave that connected, and then we'll remove it once the turbo is fully out of the car. Now what you can do is disconnect this line from your wastegate. Okay, just like that. All right, so this is what the turbo manifold looks like. So if I pull it away, you can see that there are 15 different locations where the turbo is secured by these flange nuts. So these flange nuts are either a T50 or you can also use an 11mm. So it's great because if you have a tight spot and one works better than the other, you have some options. Now in the next video, we are going to talk about this more and how to properly torque everything down. But one of the things that we wanted to let you know is that BMW states that nuts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are accessible from the top, and the rest are accessible from the bottom. Now it seems like 7 and 13 and some of these other ones you can get from the top, so we'll test this out as we go along. All right, what we're going to do now, it's going to be very difficult and we're not going to be able to really show a lot on the camera, but I'm going to remove all of these different flange nuts. So there's 15 in total. We're going to get as many from the top as we can, and then we'll finish it out from the bottom. We're going to leave just a couple in place, and then what's going to happen is Cliff's going to help support it from the top. Then I'm going to grab the turbo from the bottom. We're going to hand twist them off, rock the turbo out, and pull it out the back. Now, one of the things I wanted to let you know is that these aren't torqued down very tight. So it's nice because they're pretty easy to loosen. In fact, your oil drain plug is torqued more than these are, so these should be pretty easy for you to remove. All right, so we just got done taking all of these out. So the biggest problem that we had is this one actually isn't too bad, but these were severely corroded. So what was happening was our 11mm socket wasn't fitting on the outside, and our 50mm wasn't fitting on the inside. So one of the tips that we have for you is if you have a bad corrosion problem like we did, PB blaster the heck out of it, wait a little while, do it again. If you have some kind of wire brush, then what you can do is, if you can get in there, try to scrub some of this off, because otherwise what's gonna happen is it's not gonna fit on, you're just gonna get a little bite and you're gonna round it off and you're gonna strip it, and it's gonna be a bad day. So make sure that you have plenty of PB blaster, maybe some sandpaper and little wire brushes, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. So at this point, we just have 2 nuts that are holding the entire turbo manifold on. So what's going to happen is Cliff is going to work from the top, he's going to loosen those nuts, and then what's going to happen is I am going to guide the turbo out the bottom. All right, so now what we can do, Cliff has released that. So we can just slide this off. Just like that. Be very careful because this is very heavy. All right, turbo is out. So at this point, Cliff and I have the stock turbo off of the car, and what we want to do is we just want to take a minute to give you some tips and tricks so you kind of know what to expect. So the first thing is these flange nuts that hold on your exhaust manifold. They start out looking really nice like this, and if you have an 11mm, it slides over nice. You have a T50, it slides in nice. But Cliff, what happens over time?
They corrode.
They corrode and turn into a different size almost.
All right, so what we had to do is we sprayed all these with PB Blaster. PB Blaster is definitely your friend in this case. If you know you're gonna be doing this, go out the day before, spray it up, give it plenty of time to seep in there and hopefully loosen these up a little bit for you. Now the good thing is they are not on there super tight, so it does not take a lot of force to break them, but you are gonna have a hard time fitting either a T50 Torx or an 11mm socket on the outside. What we ended up doing a lot of times is taking an open-ended 11mm wrench, just kind of jamming it on the nut, breaking it free, and that took away some of the corrosion so that we could then get an 11mm socket on it. Now some of these, there's not even enough room because of how the exhaust manifold is to get a socket or a T50 Torx on there, so what you're gonna have to do in those cases is possibly just use an open-ended wrench like this. There were 2 that we had to do that way. It was painful, we were getting small turns at a time, but if you stick with it, it'll eventually come off.
The other thing to note is if you have an open-ended ench that has the ratcheting side, one thing that Cliff noticed is that because of where the exhaust manifold sits, if you try to slide this on, you might be able to ratchet it off, but you're not going to be able to get the nut off and you're not going to be able to get your wrench out, so be careful of that as well.
Yeah, so basically your wrench will jam up between the exhaust manifold and the nut will still be on the stud, and there'll be no way for you to tighten it up because it's really tight in there, so don't do that.
Now the other thing that we would caution you with is removing the oil lines and also the coolant lines from the turbo. Now it seems like it'd be straightforward and seems like they would pop right out. The only problem is our friend here, corrosion, was ruining our fun, and what we ended up doing is we disconnected everything from the block, pulled the turbo out, and then did it when it was outside of the car. So what I would recommend is spend the extra couple bucks and just get new lines.
Yeah, because even once it was out of the car, they were still extremely difficult, like a couple hours worth of difficult trying to remove them from the turbo. So if you're doing this upgrade, get the new lines, you'll have all new connections, and it's just worth that time and security of knowing that you have brand new stuff in there.
Exactly. Be sure to stay tuned because in part 3 of our video series on Pure Stage 2 turbos, we are going to be installing the Pure Stage 2 turbo on an N55. Once again, this is Bryan. Thanks so much for watching Keys Motorsports. If you like our videos, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe and check us out at keysmotorsports.com if you are interested in doing a Pure Stage 2 conversion on your BMW as well. Also wanted to say big thanks to Cliff and also Zach behind the camera here for helping out. This, although it probably could be done with one person, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to take a really long time, so always good to have an extra hand or two on the job. Again, this is Bryan. Thanks for watching Keys Motorsports, and have a great day.